A fleet of Royal Navy vessels, including 4 warships, set sail this morning for the Mediterranean, docking at Gibraltar within a week. It comes amid growing tensions with Spain over access to the British overseas territory, which sits at the southern tip of the Iberian Peninsula. While the underlying dispute over its sovereignty has gone on for centuries, the most recent spat erupted in July after Gibraltar dropped concrete blocks into disputed waters to create an artificial reef. Shortly afterwards, Spain toughened up their border checks at the crossing into Gibraltar, leading to long traffic queues. The logjam was only eased after the Foreign Secretary William Hague intervened. But then, in a newspaper interview, Spain's foreign minister suggested introducing a £43 fee to cross the border and even closing Spain's airspace to flights heading to Gibraltar. Well, our correspondent Duncan Kennedy is in Portsmouth, from where some of the ships will set off later on. Duncan, it's all about that timing. It does get a few eyebrows up, doesn't it?
Very much so. I mean, this is a routine operation. It's an exercise they carry out every year. As you say, though, it's just the timing of it, coming at this point when the tensions have risen yet again. There have been many of these points down the 300 years or so that Britain has had control of Gibraltar as a British overseas territory. This one, as you said, particularly nasty in the last few weeks. Some of the language used about whether Gibraltar should create this fake reef and whether Spanish fishing rights are being infringed by that. Both governments are saying this is a routine thing, we knew it was coming. Indeed, some of the British ships will be docking in mainland Spain as well as docking in Gibraltar. It's just one frigate, HMS Westminster, plus a couple of auxiliary ships that will actually be stopping in Gibraltar. But the key thing here, of course, Simon, is that it's the perception of this ship docking in Gibraltar, particularly so far as the Gibraltarians are concerned. They've already welcomed it. It was announced a few weeks ago that this thing was happening, but they've already welcomed it, saying it's another sign of Britain standing up to Spain in these kinds of disputes. The governments aren't publicly saying that, but of course the indirect messages sent by these kinds of visits, perhaps not what they once were, the gunboat diplomacy of Lord Palmerston, but nonetheless they still send out a message saying Britain is committed to Gibraltar and will be for the foreseeable future.
So just explain what exactly they're going to be doing in the Mediterranean over the next few days.
Well, there's 10 ships forming up altogether. HMS Illustrious will be leaving from here in the next hour or two. A couple of other vessels are leaving from Plymouth. 10 ships, 4 warships. They'll be going into the Med. They'll be doing exercises, for example, with Albania. They'll then go into the Gulf. They'll then go into the Indian Ocean to carry out various exercises with other friendly governments. It's the Gibraltarian stop by a frigate, not even the bigger ships amongst this flotilla, plus a couple of auxiliary ones that's getting the headlines. As also, Simon, the message being sent out by the Spanish Foreign Ministry, according to the El País newspaper, that Spain wants this whole issue about Gibraltar's future raised in the United Nations, unconfirmed reports, these have to be said, and that it might be teaming up with Argentina, who have separate claims on the Falklands, to present a united front in the United Nations. That's got a little bit of extra diplomatic traction this time round, because Argentina has got a non-permanent status for the next 2 years on the UN Security Council, although of course Britain is a permanent member of that Security Council and is likely to block any diplomatic measures that way to try and get Gibraltar and the Falkland Islands put on the agenda in the next few months or so.
Duncan, thank you very much. Duncan Kennedy there in Portsmouth. Well, let's pick up on that. Let's see how things are being looked at from Spain. Tom Burridge is our correspondent. He's there. Tom, first of all, the ships leaving Britain this morning and heading off, some heading to Gibraltar, is that a red rag to a Spanish bull?
Well, as Duncan said, the Spanish government, like the British government, have said that they were aware of this happening. This was long planned and they're not worried. And importantly, Duncan mentioned there that some of those ships are going to dock on the Spanish mainland down in Cadiz, which is the region just over from Gibraltar. But of course, the timing is difficult and this is a sensitive moment. And what's difficult, I think, in this dispute is to separate rhetoric from substance. And we've got some more, whether it's rhetoric or substance, this morning in El País newspaper. Duncan has made a reference to that just now. Essentially, El País has said that they've quoted diplomatic sources here in Spain at the Spanish Foreign Ministry talking about this possibility of making a common front with Argentina at the United Nations and possibly tabling some form of resolution about Gibraltar and the Falkland Islands.
Difficulty with that is Britain's position has never changed. Sovereignty is not an issue in either case.
Britain's position is very clear. David Cameron reiterated that last week. I was in Gibraltar all last week, and the Gibraltarians there very much welcomed the words of the Prime Minister last week, saying that Britain is committed to the sovereignty of Gibraltar. There are some issues, though. There are issues over the waters, and this is an ongoing problem. Those waters around the Rock of Gibraltar, Gibraltar says they're theirs. Spain disputes that. And therefore, this dispute, which really flared up when the Gibraltarian government put an artificial concrete reef into a spot near the waters there, it's also brought out a lot of other grievances. So the Spanish government's also talking about the problem of trafficking of contraband over the Gibraltarian border. The taxes are particularly low in Gibraltar in some cases, in particular on cigarettes. So there is a problem, no doubt, about the amount of cigarettes that is smuggled over the border from Gibraltar into Spain. So that is an issue for all parties to address. And I think over the next weeks or months, when the parties sit down, whether that's Britain and Spain, or maybe Britain, Spain, Gibraltar, and possibly even the Spanish region of Andalusia, just over the border from Gibraltar there, when the parties sit down, not only, I think, will fishing rights be addressed, there are other issues to be worked out. There are other grievances on all sides.
Tom Burridge in Barcelona, thank you very much.